Welcome to this week's class on Chassidus. We're learning a very, very powerful and meaningful Chassidic discourse. The name of the Chassidic discourse is called Yitzchok. The Rabbi said this Chassidic discourse on Shabbos Parshas Toldos in the year Tafshin Chav Ches, 53 years ago, and the Rabbi certified and edited this Chassidic discourse on Rosh Chodesh Kislev Tafshin Nun 31 years ago. The Rabbi said the discourse 53 years ago. The Chassidic discourse is based on the verse in this week's Torah portion, the famous blessings and the most powerful blessings that Yitzchok gives to Yaakov, his son Yaakov, and he says to him, "Yitin lecha Elokim," and Hashem should give you mitala shemayim, from the dew of heaven, umishmane haaretz, and from the fat of the earth, which resembles all the powerful gifts, spiritual gifts, physical gifts, all those gifts Yitzchok bestowed upon his son Yaakov, Jacob. So the question is asked, a very, very simple question. We know when it comes to blessings, when it comes to giving, when it comes to creation, when it comes to infinite, it's Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's the name of Hashem. On the other hand, when it comes to judgment, when it comes to constraint, concealment, discipline, then you have the name Elokim. Blessings are usually what? From the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. And if you can see clearly, when you have the priestly blessings, and there's 3 verses in the priestly blessings, it says Yivrecha Hashem Yishrecha, etc. Every one of the 3 verses, it says Yud Kei Vav Kei. But here in this blessing, which is the most powerful blessing that Yitzchok is giving to Yaakov, it says the name Elokim. So the question is, how do the two go together? The Rebbe adds to it, and he says that we find also that after Avram Avinu passed away, so Hashem came along and he blessed Yitzchok. Where it says, when he blessed him, he says, "Vayivorech Elokim es Yitzchok, Benoi," the son of Abraham. So if you give a look at all the blessings that Hashem blessed Abraham, and also the blessing that he blessed Yitzchok later on in his life, it always says Yud Kei Vav Kei, because blessings come from Yud Kei Vav Kei. And here, after Avram Avinu passed away, and he's blessing Yitzchok, what's the blessing he gives him? He gives him with the name of Elokim. And the question is, why Elokim? Now, obviously, if Hashem gave the first blessing to Yitzchok after Avram Avinu passed away with the name Elokim, and the blessing that Yitzchok is giving to Yaakov with the name Elokim, there must be some kind of connection between the two. And the question is, what's the connection between these 2 blessings that are both given with the name Elokim, not the name Yud Kei Vav Kei? So Rabbi explains this based on what it's brought down in the famous Siddur, which has a lot of Kabbalistic insights and commentaries on it. And there's different commentaries based on what the subject matter in the prayer book is. So in the subject matter of the gate of Tkiyot, the blowing of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, so over there the Alter Rebbe explains as follows, and he says like this, that we know in the spheroids, there's many, but there's 2 spheroids, and the first 2 of the emotional spheroids. One is Chesed, and the other one is Gvura. Generally, when you hear the word Chesed, kind, charitable, giving, etc. When you hear Gvura, what do you hear? You hear discipline, limitations, restrictions, and so on and so forth. You want to be in the light of Chesed, not necessarily in the light of Gvura. But the Alter writes as follows, in this Kabbalistic teaching, in the Gate of Tkiyot, that the flow of energy that comes down from Gvura is greater than the flow of energy that comes down from the flow of Chesed. Powerful, revolutionary, and obviously that's why we need the world of Kabballah to show us the light. That the power and the flow of energy from Gvura is much greater than the power and flow of energy from the flow of Chesed. Now, why is that? So the Alter Rebbe explains as follows. The Alter Rebbe says, because Chesed, in its nature, pure Chesed, is cold. And because Chesed is cold, disconnected, the giving is limited. It's limited. Cold, it's limited. You're going to get whatever's owed to you, whatever you're supposed to get. It's cold, calculated, even though it's Chesed, but it's cold in its nature. On the other hand, Gvura, we know, Gvura comes from warmth, passion, excitement. So because it's full of warmth and passion, so it comes in a way of tigboiris. It totally overpowers. And it up to the point, it can be so much bli gvul, without any limits. So again, the reason why gvura, giving of gvura is much more stronger, because it's with passion, it's with heat, excitement. Chesed, on the other hand, what is cold? So based on this, the Alter Rebbe explains that specifically Yitzchok, which we know is gvura, Avram is chesed, and Yitzchok is gvura. So because Yitzchok was gvura, he was able to give from the place of gvura these powerful blessings. Mitala Shemayim, from all the great things from heaven, Mishmani Aretz, from the fat of the earth, that we do not find any of these blessings, not by Avraham and not by Yaakov. And the Alter explains, because Avraham was chesed, Yaakov was tiferes, and they didn't have the power to give such great blessings. Yitzchok, on the other hand, when he wants to give a blessing, it's extremely powerful and extremely strong. Why? Because again, Yitzchok is gvura. And therefore, because since Yitzchok is gvura, when he gives a blessing, it's with tremendous abundance and literally without any limit. So based on this, Rebbe explains something very, very powerful. What does the verse say? Vayihi achrei mois Avram. Talking the first blessing that Hashem gave Yitzchok. After Avram died. So what happened? Hashem blesses Yitzchok, the son of Avraham. Why? Because in the life of Avraham, what did Avraham represent? Chesed. So what was the flowing energy in the world? Chesed. Chesed from Avram and Chesed from Hashem. What happens after Avram dies? Chesed went together with Avraham. So therefore, what was the powerful energy in the world then? If Avram is not there, you have Yitzchok. What's the powerful energy of Yitzchok? We know it's Gvura. So therefore, because once Avram dies, Chesed dies, now you have Yitzchak Gvura, so now you can have blessings that are very, very powerful. And therefore the blessings come from the name of Elokim, which obviously is much higher, much greater than the blessings of Chesed, which those blessings of Elokim couldn't be around when Avram was around, because Avram was all about Chesed. Once Avram died, that's why you were able to have the first blessing came from Gvura. So based on this, the Rebbe explains that that's also why when Yitzchok, who is Gvura, gave blessings to Yaakov, what does it say? Vitan Elokim. He wants Hashem, he's channeling down the blessings of Hashem. From what part of Hashem? Elokim, from Gvura, that the blessing should be with tremendous abundance and with tremendous strength and with tremendous flow of powerful energy. So now the Rebbe says as follows. So we see clearly there's two times where you use the idea of Elokim when it comes to blessings. When Avram Avinu dies, so Hashem blesses Yitzchak with the name Elokim, and then you have when Yitzchak blesses Yaakov Yitan Elokim. So the Rebbe says that you must say that the blessing that Yitzchak gave Yaakov Yitan Elokim is even a greater blessing than the blessing that Yitzchak received from Hashem, where Yivarech Elokim is Yitzchak Kunoi. Now, why is the blessing of Yitan Elokim greater than the one that Hashem gave to Yitzchak? And the Rebbe explains as follows. Because the fact is that the bracha that Hashem gave Yitzchak, Yivarech Elokim from the level of Elokim. So if Hashem gives Yitzchak a bracha, so it's not only for Yitzchak, it's for his children. And automatically, if Hashem gives a bracha to Yitzchak, it would have gone to Yaakov and Esav automatically. And as Rashi says, that why did Hashem bless Yitzchak when Avram Avinu died? So Rashi says that the reason why he blessed him, because Avram Avinu was afraid to bless Yitzchak. Why? Because he saw that Yitzchak's going to have two children, Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov would go in the footsteps of Avram and Yitzchak, so he was happy to give him a blessing. But because he saw that Esav would not go in his footsteps, he didn't want to give him a blessing. He didn't want to give him energy that he should be able to continue doing and living the lifestyle that he had. So therefore, but on the other hand, he wanted his son Yitzchak to receive a blessing. Hey, listen, I don't want the responsibility. I have blessings. If I give it to you, it's going to go to your children. I rather abstain and let Hashem, the one that has the source of all the blessings, let him bless you. And it's on between you and Hashem. I'm not involved in it. So in other words, like this. The blessing that Hashem gave by Yivarech Lekimis Yitzchok would have gone down and would go automatically to Yaakov and Esav. However, the bracha that Yitzchok gave, he didn't give it to both, to Yaakov and Esav. He specifically gave it to who? To Yaakov. And what was the blessing? Vitan l'chalakim, Hashem should give you, Elokim, mital shmayim shmani yoretz. So obviously it's a much greater blessing because it's only focused specifically on Yaakov. Versus the blessing he received, the Yitzchok received, it would go to both of them. Now, how do you see that it's so powerful? Because the fact is like this. The Rabbi says, for the first example he gave, because Avram was afraid to give it because he knew it would go to both, and this way Hashem gave it. The second reason the Rabbi explains as follows. Yaakov, we know, was a Ish Tom. Yoshev Halam, he was a simple person. Yaakov was a Isha Emes. Yaakov's not the type to try to go ahead and get something through trickery and so on and so forth. But we see, when it came to getting these blessings, Vitan l'chalakim, that he knew his father was going to give, he had to go ahead and dress up like Esau. He had to go ahead and serve him food, which wasn't his type of thing of doing. He did things which was not in his nature, just to receive the blessings. Why? Why did he do it? The fact is Hashem blessed his father, and he would get blessings automatically. Why did he have to go ahead and do all this trickery to receive these blessings? Because he realized it's not just a regular blessing. The blessing that his father was going to give him, Yitin l'chalakim, is much greater than blessing. Because if he do nothing, he would get his father's blessings as an inheritance. But that was a limited blessing. He wanted the greater blessing. What was the greater blessing? Yitin l'chalakim. So we see clearly what the Rebbe is saying is that this bracha of Yitin l'chalakim is a very, very powerful blessing, and it's a strong blessing because it comes from Gvura. And it's even greater than the blessing that Hashem blessed Yitzchok. So the question is, what's this powerful blessing all about? So the Rabbi explains this powerful blessing with an introduction based on what the Alter Rebbe explains in his classical book of Interior on the Parsha, and many other Chassidic discourses as well, that why did Yitzchok, and Yitzchok's plan was to bless Esav. He wasn't planning on blessing Yaakov. Yaakov came with trickery and got the blessings. But why would Yitzchok want to give Esav the blessings? In other words, what's the issue? Esav was the oldest. Now, Esav technically did sell the blessings to Yaakov. Now, but why would Yitzchok want to give Esav the blessings? He knew that he wasn't God-fearing. He knew he wasn't up to good things. He knew the blessings would be wasted. Because Yitzchok looked at Esau, and he saw that in Esav there was tremendous holy sparks. He saw powerful, huge potential in Esau. And therefore he wanted to bless him to bring in a huge light over Esav. And this way he'll be able to elevate the sparks that are in Esau. Esau was very powerful, but unfortunately they were scattered. He figured he'll bless him, it will gather all the sparks, it will elevate the sparks, and it'll accomplish tremendous things. But the fact is, he didn't. Why didn't he? Hashem didn't allow it to happen. Why? Because if Yitzchok would have blessed Esau, and again, his goal, his intention was correct, to elevate the sparks, the problem is, because it was such a powerful blessing, and Esau wasn't really ready for it, so therefore, what would have happened was, Esau would have been swallowed up by those blessings. Or he would have totally gotten nullified. So he wouldn't have accomplished anything. Esav would have lost his ability to be Esav, and the blessings wouldn't have worked. So the blessings had to go specifically through Yaakov. In other words, for these powerful blessings that would hit Esav would have been totally shaken up and obliterated and destroyed. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to elevate. So by giving the blessings first to Yaakov, and Yaakov knowing how to handle it and how to relate it to Esav, then it can have a real impact. And that's why Hashem allowed Yaakov to be aware about the blessings, and through his mother's help, and through obviously Hashem's help, he was able to receive the blessings from his father. and get the blessings of Mitala Shemayim, Ishmani Aretz, would go to Yaakov, and the goal is not just for Yaakov to keep it for himself, but the goal is for Yaakov to take the blessings, A, for himself, and to use it to transform Esav. In other words, like this. So obviously these blessings are very, very powerful. And these blessings are powerful in its own right, but it also has the power to go ahead and transform and to elevate. And by Yaakov receiving these powerful blessings, he would have the ability to transform and elevate the idea of Esav. So the Rebbe asks, what's these powerful blessings? Powerful to the point you could actually elevate the sparks? Then what's so powerful about it? So the Rebbe explains, based on what the Alter writes in Torah and many other commentaries, that we know there's something which is called Kedusha, holiness, and then there's something which is called Klipot. Klipot means, so this is what you have, for example, if you have an orange, you have the orange and you have the shell. So the orange is the edible part. The klipa is technically the shell, but in the shell, there's also holy sparks. Say they have companies that process the peel, and they make fibers out of it, and powerful stuff in there. But a human being can't really eat it, can't benefit from it. So klipa is the shell, which means it's not the revealed godliness. You need tremendous transformation. It's not bad. There's different types of klipot. There's klipot which are noigo, which are neutral, that can be transformed and elevated, and the shell is klipa tatmeot. But generally speaking, klipot, whether it's klipa noigo, shell is klipa tatmeos, which is the opposite of kedusha. Kedusha is holiness. It's something you see and you can elevate, you can engage with. Torah, mitzvahs is kedusha. Then there's things which are neutral, that need to be elevated, and certain things we can't be elevated. But generally speaking, klipot, when you deal with the world of klipot, the number that represents klipot is number 11. Yud Aleph, that represents klipot. On the other hand, kedusha, what's the number that's associated with kedusha and holiness? That's number 10. So again, kedusha is 10, and klipot is 11. What's the idea? So Rabbi explains like this. Again, klipot is 11. Kedusha is 10. And again, to be clear, 10 means 10, not 9, and not 11, etc. Or not any other number, specifically 10. What's the connection? And because Rabbi explains as follows. What's 11? So it's actually called, in Kabballah, it's called the 11 crowns the Misavusa. Yud Aleph Kisr Misavusa. What does that mean? Because the way it works in Kedusha is, so we have as follows. You have a light and you have a vessel. So if you have a light and no vessel, what's the light? What can you do with the light? Nothing. It's a light. You need a vessel. If you have a vessel and no light, what's the vessel worth? So in Kedusha, you have to have a light and a vessel. Anytime you have a light with a vessel, that's Kedusha. In other words, if you, for example, you sit and learn, and you don't bring it down to practicality, that's light, but there's no vessel, it's not going to last. Or, for example, if you just do mitzvot and you don't learn, that's creating vessels, but you have no light. So in life, you want a balance. In the spiritual world, you want to learn Torah, which gives you the light. You want to do mitzvot, which creates the vessels. And you want a balance between having light and having vessels. Just learning Torah, eventually you're not going to have Torah either, because the light is going to have no way to, has to penetrate somewhere. If you just do mitzvahs, at some point you're not going to be inspired, you're going to be burnt out. So you need a balance between learning, and you need a balance between doing. And this way you have the fusion of the two. Now, so what happens in holiness, every time you have a light, you have a vessel. Now, therefore, let's look at the 10 sfirot. In the 10 sfiros, so for example, you have Chachma. So Chachma, there's two parts to Chachma. There's the light of Chachma and the vessel of Chachma. Bina, there's the light of Bina and the vessel of Bina. Das, or if you count Keser, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes. So in the world of Kedusha, when you see 10 sfiros, what do you see? You see the light of the sphere of each one of the sfirot and the vessel of each one of the sfirot. And the light is part of the vessel. And the light is connected to the vessel. If you have just a light and no vessel, that's not holy. Or if you have just a vessel and no light, that's not holy. Now, but the fact is, how can you have a vessel with no light? How does the vessel exist? It needs a light for it to exist. So what happens is, in the unholy world, you have the light which is really disconnected from the vessel. And because you have the light which is disconnected in the vessel, that's how you end up with 11 in the unholy world. Why do you end up with 11? Because you have 10 vessels, and you have one light that's disconnected that gives it energy. So that's called klipa. Why? Because how do you get to 11? It should be 10 partners. If you have one leader and 10 followers, one light and 10 vessels, that's klipa. So that's why klipa go into the category of 11. And matter of fact, when it comes to the ketores in the temple, the incense, they had 11 incense. Why 11? Because there's 11 klipot, and our job is to transform and elevate the world, so you need 11 to combat that. So the purpose of the 11 ketores is to elevate the 11 klipot that are out there. Now, so generally speaking again, when it comes to Kedusha, it's a pair. Everything comes in pairs. So if you have 10 sfirot, you have 10 lights. On the other hand, when it comes to klipot, you can have 10 vessels and one light, totally disconnected. Now, why doesn't, in the world of klipa, why can't the light be part of the vessel? Why is it disconnected? Because what happens is like this. It's very simple. In klipa, the light is egotistical. So if the light becomes part of the vessel, what happens now? The light and the vessel is one. The light can't handle the fact that it's one with the vessel. If I'm the light, what do you mean? Why am I one with the vessel? Why am I up here? I need to be above the vessel. It would totally lose its identity. So in the world of klipot, it's always going to be one above. It's going to be 11. It's never going to be a real partner. Why? Because how can it be a partner? How can it lose its identity? Unfortunately, in klipot, humility is not a quality. Ego is a quality. And therefore it has to be 11. It has to always be a step above. In Kedusha, on the other hand, it's all about partnership. It's not about me being separate. On the contrary, if I'm separate, I'm klipa. I want to be one with the vessel. The light in the vessel wants to be one. Now, so again, so in the world of klipot, it's always one above, one up. It's going to be 11. It's not going to be a partner. In the world of Kedusha, it's always about partnerships. It's always going to be 10. 10 lights and 10 vessels that totally become one. Now, the fact is that everything that Hashem created has a counterpart. In other words, so Sitra Achra, Klipa, has 11. And 11, again, is not a holy number. On the other hand, there has to be a holy 11. Again, the 10 Sfirot, in the holiness, it's 10. 10 lights, 10 vessels. In Klipa, it's 1 above 10 because 1 has to be the big boss. It can't mesh with all the 10 sfirot. But in order to create a transformation, you have to have an equal. So where do we have 11, 1 up in holiness? So you also have 1 up in holiness. What is the 1 up in holiness? That there's one level which is above the 10 sfirot and disconnected from it. But again, it's not part of the 10 sfirot. In unholiness, the 11 is technically should have been part of the 10 sfirot, but it's sticking out. It's not natural to be sticking out, but it's sticking out. In holiness, each one is part of it, but there's something which is above it, which is higher than it. So it's not naturally supposed to be part of the sfirot, it's naturally one above, which we call the idea of makif. It hovers over it, and that's its identity. It's not meant to be one of it. It's specifically set up as a higher light that cannot be one of it. It's makif. And therefore, matter of fact, it's not considered part of the 10 sfirot. Like for example, it says antu chad. There's one that's above it. V'loi b'chushbon. It's not in the cheshbon. It's not in the calculation of the 10. Because if it's calculation 10, it wouldn't be one separate. It's something unique. On the other hand, when it comes in the world of the Sitra Achra, the makif actually should be part of it. But it doesn't become part of it because once it becomes part of it, it's going to lose its identity. So it has to stay separate. Now, so if we want to transform and elevate the 11 of the klipot of the Sitra Achra. How do we do it? By bringing in the makif of Kedusha, which is above the 10 Sfirot, which is not part of it. And in Hebrew, in the word of Kabbalah, it's called Atik. Because we know, for example, that there's 10 Sfirot. Above the 10 Sfirot, there's something which is called Keser, because we're not going to count Keser now as part of the 10. We're going to use Das. So Keser's above it. What's the higher part of Keser? Atik. So the Atik is going to be the antidote to fight the Yud Aleph Klipot. Now, so in Kedusha again, you have 10 sets. One is totally above it. In Klipa, what do you have? You don't have 10. You have actually 11, which is not a natural 11. It's one sticking out of the 10 set. So therefore, the Rabbi explains like this. So what's the fight? What do we use to combat Klipot? The real 11, which is basically one out of the 10 Sfirot, which is basically Atik, which is Makif, and it's not supposed to be part of it. But that we use to combat the 11 of the Klipot. And based on this, Rabbi explains beautifully, V'yitin la'achalakim, Hashem should give you, who? To give to Yaakov, because he has to go ahead and transform the powerful lights that are in Esau, mital hashamayim. What's the first blessing he's giving him? Tal. Tal, we know, Tal is Atik. So he's giving him the idea of Atik, the higher part of Keser, so that he should have the power and the tools to transform the sparks of Esav, which is the 11 of Klipot, through the fact that he gave him the idea of Atik. Now, so here we see powerfully, what's this V'yitin l'chalakim? Now when you say Saturday night, after Havdalah, you're going to say V'yitin l'chalakim. Again, so first of all, you know V'yitin l'chal, we know Elokim is, we're talking about heavy, heavy blessings. And Mital, we know already, Mital is referring to Atik. What's the idea of Atik? It's one above the 10 Sfirot. It's Makif. So that we can combat the 11 of what? Of the Klipot. Now, what's the goal? The goal is this Atik should go ahead and transform the 11 of the Klipot. Now, Atik, in order for it to go ahead and transform, Atik is, so to speak, the tool we're using. But in order for Atik to get fueled up and to have the charge and the energy to go ahead and do its job, you have to draw down into Atik, so to speak, the bullets. Atik is like the gun, the spiritual gun. And the bullets are what? Drawing down Atzmos Oirein Soif, which is even higher than Atik. You have to bring in the essence of the infinite light, which is even higher than Atik, into Atik. And by drawing it in there, you're able to transform the 11 Klipot. Why? Why do you need Atzmos Oirein Soif? Because what does Atik mean? Atik means it's netak. It's separated. And which the fact is, it is disconnected from Hishtalshalus, the way it evolves. The evolvement is the 10 Sfirot. The 10 Sfirot start at Chachma, Bina Das, and all the emotions. Now, Keser, when it's disconnected from the 10 Sfirot, and Atik, especially the highest one, is disconnected. It's not part of it. In order for Atik to come down into this world, how could it? It's Makif. It can't come into this world. So in order for it to come down into this world, this powerful Atik, this number 11, which we're going to use to transform the 11 of the Klifot, you have to bring in Atzmos Oirein Soif, the essence, the infinite light of Hashem, which is not limited to any limitation, and that will give the Atik the ability to do its job. And based on this, we understand the powerful blessings that Hashem gave, Yitin L'cha Elokim, much bigger than we said before, that it's greater than the blessing by Yivarech Elokim Yitzchok. That when Hashem blessed Yitzchok after Avraham Avinu died. Why? Because the blessing of Yitin L'cha Elokim is that you need to be able to have Tal, Atik, should come down and to elevate, transform the sparks of Esau. And how does that happen? It happens through the infinite light of Ein Sof. And that's why the Rabbi says, if you give a look specifically, what does the verse say? V'yitin lecha, so it say Elokim. It doesn't say Elokim, it adds a hey beforehand. V'yitin lecha he Elokim, with a hey, which is basically emphasizing. What is hey reference to? The Rabbi says, hey of ha Elokim is Helem ha'atzmi de Oirein Soif. The concealment, the essence of the concealment of the infinite light. And from there, you have the power to transform. So you just learned now another powerful idea. Viten lecha, not just Elokim, with tremendous power, but He Elokim, which He is from the concealment of the infinite light of Hashem. And by having the He, which is the infinite light of Hashem, Atzma Serev and Soif, infused into Tal, then you have the power and the ability to transform the idea of Esav. And based on this, Rabbi explains something very, very powerful. It says in the Medrash. And the Medrash says like this, that another insight into the blessings. The Medrash says, Mitala Shemayim. What does it mean Hashem gave him from the dew of heaven? Very simple. It's referring to Mikra, the Torah Shabbat, the 5 books of Moses. Umishmane ha'aretz, from the fat of the earth. What is that referring to? That's referring to Torah Shabbal Peh, Mishnah, Dagenis, Talmud, and so on and so forth. So the Rabbi asks a simple question. The Medrash says, again, so Mital Shemayim is Mikra, Torah Shabbat, and Mishmani Aretz is Torah Shabbal Peh, Mishnah and Talmud, and so on and so forth. So the Rabbi asks a simple question. One second. Yitzchok blessed him, according to this Medrash, with Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbal Peh. Torah we got from Hashem. Hashem gave us a Torah. And the only reason why Hashem created the world was to give us a Torah. And we know that Hashem made a condition when He created the world, that if we're going to receive the Torah, He'll keep the world going. If not, He's going to destroy the world. So Torah we got from Hashem. We don't have a choice. So what does it mean? The Medrash is saying that we got Torah. And the Rebbe explains that what does it mean that he gave us a Torah? And the Rebbe explains very simple. The blessing that Yitzchok gave us, Mitala Shemayim referring to Mikra, Torah Shabbat, and Mishmane Aretz referring to Torah Shabbal Peh, Mishnah and Talmud is referring to not Torah, that we have from Hashem. It's the blessing to Yegiya b'Torah, that we should toil in Torah. We should put in a lot of effort into meditating on Torah, understanding Torah, comprehending Torah, putting in tremendous effort into it. And when a person puts in tremendous effort into learning Torah, then you get to the higher level of Torah. What does that mean, the higher level? The way Torah is on its own. I know it's like this. Because the Torah, in essence, what is it? It's the Chachma of Hashem. Higher than it's even Chachma Stima, like literally the secrets, the highest, deepest secrets. Now, when you learn Torah, and you learn it with tremendous effort, and you put your giyah, you toil in Torah, you actually reach, which is called in Kabbalah, it's called Chayzer. Because when you just learn Torah, it's Yasher. I got what it says. Okay, very nice. But if you want to get to Chayzer, the light that's like much deeper, and the one that actually returns in a much deeper way, and you want to get to the Hela Ma'atzmi, the concealment part of Torah, Ayin, as the verse says, Ayin Rasal Elakim Zolasecha. The only one that can see it is when you put in your effort. So that was the bracha that Yitzchok gave. The bracha that Yitzchok gave Yaakov and gave each and every one of us, that we say Mitzvah Shabbos, that we should, according to the Medrashes, that we should put in a lot of effort into learning Torah Shabbat, Chumash, with the commentaries, Torah Shabbal Peh, Mishnah, Talmud, with all its commentaries. That is the blessing that it gave us. And by learning Torah with Yogiyah, we'll reach to the highest levels of the Chachma of Hashem, Chachma Stima, the concealed part of the wisdom of Hashem, or as he calls it, Chayzer, and so on and so forth. Now, Rabbi adds to this idea, what did we say before? That the idea of Sitra Achra is 11. In other words, the one above is part of the number 10. Why? Because the light is part of the part that gives it energy to it. It's totally disconnected. Now, what happens when you go ahead and you transform through Tal, right, through Elokim, you transform the 11 of Klipot. So then what happens is, when you transform the 11 of Klipot by bringing in the Tal, or by learning Torah Yigriya and bringing in the powerful light of Hashem, atmosphere and down to this world, what happens is you elevate the holy sparks of klipot. But what happens is also, the Rebbe says, not only do you elevate the holy sparks of the unholy sparks of klipot, you actually create on the spiritual side that this level of atik, which we said before is makif, and it cannot become a pneumius because it's makif, by actually elevating the holy sparks that are in the 11 of klipot, we cause that atik not only goes into the klipot to transform it, but it comes into the 10 sfirot, not in a makif way, but actually in a pneumistic way. So when we do our avodah, by transforming the world, by learning Torah with Yigiyah, and transforming the holy sparks, not only do we transform the world, but we actually cause atik, which is naturally a makif, it actually is able to come in us in a way of pneumius. And Rebbe says this idea that atik comes into our intellect, our emotions, in an internal way is even greater than the fact that atik is used to transform the klipot. Why? Because when you're going into transform, so you're transforming it. And that's the power of atik, that can transform the other 11. But the fact is, in the 10 spheroids, something above it can't really go into it. If it's makif, how does it go into it? Notice, so how does it go in? Because that's the power of atzmasar and saif, that it can accomplish that as well. So when we do that, we're actually revealing atzmos, the infinite, the essence of Hashem, which is not limited to any type of calculation. So normally we say, guess what? We have the 10 spheroids, and each one is chachma, the light, and the vessels all together. Then you have makif, which is above it, and it stays above it. But what happens when you bring down atik to transform the world? So now you reached atzmos. Once you go to the essence of Hashem, then there's no limit. Atik could come into spheroids. When you on a certain level it can, but when you reach atzmos inside, it could come into this world. And based on this, the Rebbe explains why it says in the Torah, "V'yitein lecha." We know beforehand it's speaking about something else. So it should start off, "Yitein lecha," Hashem should give you. What do you mean? Vi means and, like continuation of before. What do you mean? Before is a different subject. So what does it mean, "V'yitein," and he should give? So the Rebbe explains very simple. Yitain, Yitain, and he should give. That means Hashem should give, Yitain. The Vav is actually another blessing. Yitain he should give, Yachzer Yitain he should give again. There's two givings. Notice when the blessing is Hashem should give and give again. Two different levels of the blessing. What's the two blessings? So the first giving, the Rebbe explains, is drawing down the essence of the concealment, B'yitin Chalahim, Elokim, to transform and elevate the berurim of the klipot. That's the first giving. And the second, Yachzer V'yitin, is drawing down the essence of the concealment of Hashem, which happens through the fact that we transform into B'pnimius, into our Sfirot. So that's the ultimate V'yitin L'cha. So again, just to recap, V'yitin L'cha, the Kinder explains, Yite means the first giving is when you draw down the essence of Hashem to transform the world, the klipot. And the second Yitain is that you draw down the essence of Hashem into our finite spheros of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, and the intellect, Chachma, Bina, Das, and all the 10 spherot. And based on this, Rabbi explains very, very simple that through the fact of a Yitain L'chalakim, you draw down the infinite light of Hashem into our world to elevate the holy sparks and into our internal world on both levels. What happens is we're able to draw down Mitala Shemayim from the greatest blessings on high, or Mishmani Haaretz, and like the Medrash says, Mikra, Teresh B'Ksav, Mishnah, Teresh Balpeh, the revealed part of the Torah, the concealed part of the Torah, the 5 books of the Moses, the Mishnah and the Talmud. And not only that's on a spiritual level, but also on a physical level. Here comes the real blessings. In a real tangible way. That we know that Tal, never stops. Rain, you can have it, rain season, not rainy season, but dew is always going to be there. And there's no reason that it should stop. And the same thing also, mishmani aretz, we should have plenty of abundance of produce and wheat and whatever we need, corn, etc., oil, wine, all the beautiful blessings. And everything should be b'harchava, with abundance. Not what we should have, but we should have without skimping, with tremendous abundance. Up until we'll have the building of the third Beis Hamikdash. And we know when it comes to Yaakov called it Bayis, the real Beis Hamikdash. And from the Beis Hamikdash, the light of Hashem will go out to the whole world, that will be able to make the whole world for a dira lo yizbareh b'tachtonim. So obviously, as you can tell, that these blessings of Yitzchok is the greatest blessings. The blessings that Yitzchok gave Yaakov is the greatest blessings. And the greatest blessings are that we have the power to draw down the infinite Hashem into this world by learning Torah with effort, by transforming the sparks in the world, bringing the infinite light of Hashem, even Atik, into our lives in a pneumistic way. And again, obviously the Rebbe says clearly, we can do it by learning Torah, but ultimately we'll have all the blessings in a way of a Yitin L'cha, in a revealed way, with tremendous blessings, Begashmias, Beruchnias, and as the Rebbe says, the greatest blessings with the Binyan Beis Hamikdash, Hashlishi, and we'll all merit to be in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, and Mishram, God willing, the next class we'll be learning together in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. Have a great and blessed week with all the tremendous blessings of the Yitin L'cha Elokim.